My own grandson called me a pathetic old fool in front of everyone. Well, that sentence still echoes in my head as I sit here tonight, staring at the empty chair across from me. The sting of his words cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just what he said. It was the look in his eyes, the shame, the disgust, as if I were nothing more than a burden he couldn't wait to shake off. The party had been loud, full of music, flashing lights, and the smell of expensive liquor. My daughter's house looked more like a nightclub than a family home. I felt out of place the moment I walked through the door, carrying a small velvet case in my pocket. It had been waiting 20 years for this moment, waiting for Daniel's 21st birthday. He was standing in the center of the room, surrounded by friends in polished shoes and designer jackets. They cheered as he downed another drink, their voices echoing against the walls. I remember how proud his mother looked, snapping pictures with her phone. And there I was, the old man in the corner, holding on to something that mattered more than anything money could buy. When the crowd settled, I stepped forward, my legs trembling under the weight of what I carried. "Daniel," I said, my voice louder than I expected. "This belonged to your grandfather before me. Now, it's yours." I did it, and I opened the case and revealed a fountain pen with a golden tip. The same pen my father had used to sign every important document in his life, from the deed to our first home to the last letter he wrote to my mother before she passed. It wasn't flashy, but it was history. It was legacy. Daniel took one glance at it. Then he smirked. "A pen? Really? What am I supposed to do? Write love letters in the Stone Age?" His friends roared with laughter, one of them shouting, "Maybe he found it at a thrift store." The sound of their amusement drowned out everything else. My hand, the same hand that once carried him on my shoulders, shook uncontrollably as I closed the case. I wanted to tell him what it meant, how many sacrifices were hidden in that simple pen. But the words never left my mouth. I just stood there, humiliated, as my grandson turned back to his friends, raising his glass as if I had never existed. And in that moment, I realized I had lost him to a world I no longer understood. I drove home in silence after the party. The highway, a ribbon of wet light. The wipers kept time like an old metronome. On the seat beside me lay the velvet case, shut again, small as a swallowed apology. I kept my eyes on the white lines and tried not to think about the laughter. It kept bubbling up anyway, like a bad song I could not turn off. My house sits on the edge of a New England town, a narrow street lined with maple trees and mailboxes with peeling paint. I have lived here for 38 years. The porch boards know my weight. The front door sticks when it rains. Inside, the air smells of books and coffee. There are framed photos on the hallway wall. My father in his Navy uniform, my wife Ruth holding our newborn daughter Olivia, the three of us on a windy beach in Maine. I am 71. My knees argue with me on cold days. My hands are not as steady as they were, but I still make breakfast and rake leaves and fix what I can. I taught high school literature for 4 decades. I loved the way a story could rescue a quiet kid. I kept a box in my desk for students who needed a pen. Most weeks it was empty by Friday. Ruth used to tease me that I ran a tiny charity. She made meatloaf on grading nights and sang off-key to the radio. She has been gone for 3 years. I still set a second plate and then put it back. Olivia is our only child. She lives 20 minutes away in a suburb of tall hedges and spotless driveways. She is brisk and kind in her own strict way. Her husband Martin works in finance and knows how to make people feel seen. They gave their son every comfort we could not afford when Olivia was small. Private school, hockey camp, tutors. I do not envy their money. I envy their certainty. Daniel was sweet once. He fell asleep on my chest to the rhythm of the dishwasher. He ran to the porch to watch the garbage truck and waved like it was a parade. In summer, we sat on the back steps with popsicles and let the red syrup drip down our wrists. He asked 1,000 questions. Why is the moon following us? Do worms sleep? How do you know when a story is true? I told him what my father told me. A true story keeps beating after you close the book. My father was named Walter. He worked as a claims clerk and fixed watches in the evenings. When the house was quiet, he sat beneath a lamp with a loupe over one eye. Tiny gears glittered on the tray. He saved for months to buy that fountain pen. He said it kept him honest because it wrote every flaw. When I turned 21, he placed it in my palm and said, "Use this to sign the good parts of your life." I used it to sign the mortgage and the consent form when Ruth went into surgery. I used it to choose the words for her headstone. My house has 3 rooms that matter. The kitchen, with its oak table, and a dent where Daniel once slammed a toy truck. The living room where Ruth and I danced to records on Friday nights. The study at the back with a narrow window that faces a maple tree. In that study, I keep a shoebox of letters I never sent. I wish I could say the night of the party was a shock. It was not. The clues had been collecting like dust in corners. The new car he could not quite afford. The way he flinched when I talked about work. The habit of checking his phone while I spoke. Small things that add up until you cannot ignore the sum. At Thanksgiving, he joked that books were heavy screens without batteries. Everyone laughed. Later, I stared at my plate and felt tired. Olivia tries to bridge us. She invites me for Sunday lunch and places Daniel across from me. She nudges the talk. Tell Grandpa about your internship. Tell Grandpa about your project. He tells me just enough to sound busy. I nod and sip my coffee. We talk about the weather a lot. I drive home with leftovers and a loneliness that rattles in the car like a loose bolt. I can be stubborn. I measure too much by the past. I still carry cash and dislike paying bills on a phone. I do not understand the economy of followers and likes. I lose patience with noise, but I know loyalty when I see it. I know work when I see it. Ruth once cut my sandwich in half on a day I failed an exam. Eat first, then grieve, she said. It became the rule of our marriage. The night after the party, I placed the velvet case in the top drawer of my desk. I left the drawer open and sat with my hands in my lap. The house made its soft, nocturnal sounds. The fridge motor. The baseboard heat clicking. Somewhere outside a fox called once and then fell silent. I whispered the blessing my father said over me. May you carry what matters, not what shines. The room went still. I realized I had to find my way back to Daniel. Or fail trying. In the morning, I brewed coffee and looked at the photos again. Ruth's smile still steadied me. I pressed my thumb to the glass and made a promise. I will not let another generation forget who they are. I will try a different door if the front one stays closed. I will tell the story until it finds its listener. 2 weeks passed after the party before I saw Daniel again. The sting of his laughter lingered. But family has a way of pulling you back even when you are not ready. Olivia called one Thursday evening and said, "Dad, we're hosting a small dinner this weekend. Come. Daniel will be here. It's time you two talked." Her voice had that firm edge Ruth used to carry when she wanted me to stop sulking. So I agreed. Saturday arrived gray and damp. The kind of weather that makes you wear a sweater inside. I carried a box wrapped in simple paper. Not velvet this time. Inside was a collection of letters Ruth had written during our first year of marriage. She had tied them with a faded ribbon. I thought maybe Daniel could read her words and understand that love and endurance mattered more than anything money could buy. Olivia's house was polished as always. Fresh flowers on the counter. Candles already lit. Martin shook my hand. His grip solid. His eyes darting toward the game playing silently on the television. Daniel walked in late. Phone in his hand. A laugh still clinging to his mouth from whatever message he had read. He hugged his mother first. then nodded at me like a neighbor he barely knew. Dinner passed with chatter about internships and vacation plans. I waited for a moment when the table fell quiet. When it did, I slid the box across to Daniel. "This is from your grandmother," I said softly. His eyes flickered with surprise. He pulled off the paper and lifted the lid. The letters, neat and fragile, lay inside like pressed flowers. He frowned. "What's this?" "They're her letters to me. Written when we were young. She wanted you to know her voice, not just her picture on the wall." He picked one up, turned it over, then set it back. "Grandpa, I don't even write emails. Why would I read old letters?" His friends weren't here, but the same tone was sharp, careless. Olivia's face tightened. Martin cleared his throat. I felt the air collapse around us. I reached out, steadying my hand on the table. "They're not just paper. They are her." She talked about faith, about sacrifice, about how much she wanted the best for you before you were even born. Opened. Daniel sighed, pushed the box back toward me. "I don't have time for sentimental stuff. I've got exams, projects. Life's not about sitting around reading someone else's past." And the words cut, but I forced myself to breathe. I closed the box gently, as if the letters could still bruise. Olivia whispered, "Daniel." Her voice both warning and plea. He shrugged and reached for his phone again. I excused myself after dessert. As I walked to my car, the damp air carried the faint smell of rain on pavement. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the steering wheel as if it held an answer. I thought of Ruth's handwriting, the loops and flourishes that had carried me through war, debt, and grief. And now those words, meant to bridge generations, had been dismissed as useless paper. That night I laid the letters on my desk and read them aloud to the empty house. Her voice filled the rooms. I imagined Daniel someday desperate for guidance and realizing too late that it had been here all along. The next morning, I placed the letters back in the drawer with the fountain pen. They would stay safe until he was ready, if he ever was. But a seed had been planted. I began to wonder if Daniel's indifference was hiding something darker. The way his hands trembled when he set down his glass, the constant checking of his phone, the distracted glaze in his eyes. It was not just arrogance. It was worry, gnawing at him like a silent parasite. I told myself I would watch more closely. The truth always finds its way to the surface. And I feared the day it did. Olivia called on a Monday and said Daniel wanted to meet for lunch near campus. I agreed. The diner sat on a corner of brick and glass. Students lined the window, bent over laptops and fries. Daniel arrived late, hair damp from the gym, phone in his hand. He kissed his mother on the cheek, then slid into the booth across from me. He did not look at the menu. He looked at me. "So, about that pen," he spoke as if clearing his throat of a nuisance. "You still have it?" "Right." And then was well content see just a carn. "I do," I said. "It belonged to your great-grandfather. You know that." And didn't numbs to the truth. He drummed his fingers on the table. "I have an idea. You give it to me now. I put it to use. Win-win." And didn't numbs to the truth. Olivia's eyes flickered. "Daniel, slow down." And didn't numbs to the truth. He leaned back, spreading out in the booth. "Mom, please. Grandpa gives history lectures when I ask for help. I need something practical." "And didn't I?" "You mean money," I said. He smiled, thin and bright. "Money is practical. The pen could help." "And didn't I?" "The pen is not a credit card," I said. "It is a promise." And he laughed once. Sharp. Heads turned. "A promise that buys lunch, maybe. Look at this place. Everyone is moving forward. I am stuck listening to museum talk. I felt heat climb my neck. I kept my voice even. If you are in trouble, say it plainly. He looked at Olivia. Then back at me. Fine. I need 3,000 by Friday. I have a project due. There are fees. It is a long story. And ward, 3,000 for a project. I said. What kind of class charges a ransom? Creative the courses. He rolled his eyes. Not a class. Life. I thought you of all people would understand. You spent years telling me to take chances. Well, I did. Creative the courses. Olivia reached for his hand. He pulled away. The waitress came. Poured coffee. Left without smiling. Work part-time. I said. Cut back. Talk to your advisor. Talk to me before the fire starts. Creative the courses. He snorted. There it is. The sermon. You want me to be a saint who eats instant noodles and reads dead poets. Newsflash. That story does not play anymore. There. I set my cup down and saw a small ripple on the surface. I am not asking for sainthood. I am asking for honesty. There. He leaned in. His voice low. Honesty. All right. I was humiliated at that party. You brought a relic in front of my friends. People asked me for days why my family cannot give normal gifts. Do you know how that feels? There. You think I do not love you? He said. I do, but love does not pay for internships or rent or the trip everyone is taking after finals. I need this. You have a drawer full of mementos and a house full of silence. Share the one thing that could help. Friend, the silence is mine, I said. The pen is mine until it is given with respect. Frank, he sat back, face hardening. So that is a no. Friend, that is a not yet. Friend, he laughed again. Not yet. That was what you told me when I asked to drive your car. When I asked to stay over during finals. When I asked for anything. Not yet. Maybe later. When you earn it. You hang everything on worthiness. Like a gatekeeper at a museum. The one bros gaves for and rejected with him change. Because I know what it costs when people do not earn what they hold. I said. Things break. People break. The one brode is, the king meeting lines. A present the readily, the come me, the raid from Nesh. He stared at me across the table and said in a voice that did not sound like his. Maybe it is time to let something break. The one so that the mean my founds. The mean my found self. Olivia pressed her napkin to her mouth. I remembered Daniel at 7. Knees scraped. Asking if blood meant the end of the world. I told him no then. I could not say it now. I reached into my pocket and placed a folded photo on the table. Ruth in a summer dress. Daniel on her hip. Sunlight in their hair. She wanted you to carry more than success. I said. She wanted you to carry kindness. No send. He glanced at the photo. Then flipped it over. Kindness does not open doors. No send. It opens the right ones. I said. He pushed his chair back. The legs squealed on tile. I am done begging for old blessings. If you want me to respect your relics, respect my reality. That was no sown and was. Olivia stood quickly. Daniel, please, sit. We can talk at home. That was no sown and was. He shook his head. There is nothing to talk about if the answer is not yes. He looked down at me. You love your rules more than you love me. That was no sown and was. The floor tilted. That is not true. That was no sown and was. He picked up the check, glanced at it, and set it down again. Then prove it. That was no sown and was. He walked out into the noon glare. Olivia sank into the booth and covered her eyes. I sat in the smell of coffee and ketchup. The pen was safe at home, but my chest felt as if I had left it on the table. I folded the photo carefully and slid it back into my pocket. Olivia lowered her hands. "What do we do?" she asked. "We wait for the truth to show its face," I said, "and we do not look away when it does." The sky had cleared to a blunt blue. The flag above the post office snapped in a stiff wind. Olivia hugged me hard, then hurried toward her car. I walked to the bus stop to think alone. I stood there and realized the conflict had finally stepped into daylight. Sun lit the brick facades in a hard white glare. A bus hissed to a stop and moved on. I felt very small and very awake. The next choice would mark us. I knew it. And I feared that he knew it too. That night I could not sleep. The house groaned with its usual aches. The pipes ticking. The clock in the hallway marking each second like a nail driven into wood. I lay in the dark, eyes open, and thought about the men and women who came before me. The weight of them pressed against my chest. And I realized Daniel had no idea what it meant to belong to such a line. He saw only the surface, never the roots. I rose before dawn and went to the study. The drawer slid open with a sigh, revealing the fountain pen, the letters, and the photographs I had guarded for decades. I lifted the pen first, heavy in my palm. I remembered Walter, my father, bent over his desk repairing watches, turning gears no wider than a grain of rice. He worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table during the leanest years. When I was a boy, I used to fall asleep to the sound of his tools clicking. That pen was his prize, bought after months of saving dimes and dollars. He called it his proof that patience could become beauty. I set the pen down and opened Ruth's letters. Her handwriting was still alive on the page, round and graceful. The first letter spoke of our tiny apartment in Boston, how the ceiling leaked whenever it rained, how she cooked beans 3 nights in a row without complaint. She joked that love tasted better than meat. Another letter described her dream of planting roses by the front door. Even though we could not afford a house then, she said one day we would walk past those roses together and know we had survived. And we did. When we finally bought this home, she planted roses in the soil herself, knees in the dirt, laughter in her throat. I see them every spring, red and stubborn, still climbing the fence long after she left this world. My mind drifted back further, to my grandfather Samuel, a man I knew only through stories. He carried the family through the Great Depression. He lost his job at the mill, but refused to lose his dignity. He worked odd jobs, fixed fences, shoveled snow, anything that would earn a few coins. When food grew scarce, he gave his portion to his children and went hungry. That spirit, that relentless will to endure, was supposed to flow down the line like a river. Daniel had inherited the name but not yet the current. By morning light, the study looked smaller, the shelves sagging with years of papers and textbooks. I pulled out an old photo album. There was Ruth on our wedding day, veil trembling in the wind, eyes shining with a hope that felt infinite. There was Olivia as a child, her hand clutching mine on the first day of school, her face set with determination. And there was Daniel at 3, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair, his laugh pure and unguarded. I closed the album and pressed it to my chest. Somewhere along the years, the thread had frayed. I had believed that giving him stories, showing him the relics of our family, would be enough. But he lived in a world of flashing screens, of quick rewards, of debt, disguised as privilege. The language of sacrifice sounded foreign to him. I made tea and carried it to the porch. The air was crisp, the sky pale with morning. A neighbor waved on his way to work. I nodded but could not return the smile. All I could think about was Ruth's last day in the hospital. She held my hand, weak but fierce, and whispered, Protect what matters. Do not hand it over to someone who will throw it away. At the time, I thought she meant the house, the savings, the keepsakes. Now I realized she meant more than objects. She meant our story. I whispered back into the empty morning. I am trying. Ruth, I am trying to hold the line. And the second is Leif. The phone rang later that afternoon. It was Martin. Voice hushed. He asked us for money again. 5,000 this time. When I said no, he stormed out. I do not know where he is now. That was him. The ache in my stomach deepened. I walked to the study, touched the pen again, and understood the truth. This was not just about disrespect. It was about desperation. Daniel was drifting, and the river he had chosen was dark and fast. I told Martin, we must be ready. The past has a way of returning when you least expect it, and sometimes it arrives as a storm. That was him. The truth did not arrive politely. It walked in through my inbox at 6 a.m. Subject line bright as a siren. Consignment. I stared at the sender. Whitaker and Lane Fine Auctions. The email thanked Mr. Mercer for submitting provenance notes for a 1,937 fountain pen. Gold nib. Family engraving. It asked to confirm a viewing appointment before Friday. Any Downston. I read it twice. Then a third time. The auction house had my name, my address, and a description a stranger could not guess. Only someone who had handled the pen would know the engraving inside the cap. There was a field labeled Consignor Contact. It listed Daniel's campus email. My first instinct was to delete the message, pretend it belonged to some other life. Instead, I printed it and slipped it into my pocket. I went to the study, opened the drawer, and lifted the velvet case. The pen lay there, steady, as if it had never considered leaving me. I drove across town to a shop called Ink and Ivy, a narrow place that smelled of cedar and old books. A bell chimed as I entered. The owner, a woman in her 50s with ink-stained fingers, looked up and smiled. I showed her the email and the pen. Her eyes sharpened. "May I?" she asked. She unscrewed the cap. Then the barrel. "Your father kept this well," she murmured. "This is not a common model. Handmade clip. Custom feed. Someone loved this." And was the loading? She angled the pen to the light and frowned. With a pair of tweezers, she drew out a sliver of paper from the hollow of the barrel, rolled tight like a secret. My breath stopped. She placed it on a felt mat and nudged it toward me. My hands shook as I unrolled it. Ruth's handwriting flowed across the scrap. Not a letter, a note. Short, clear. "If you are holding this, you have opened what you barely understand. Give this pen only to the one who chooses duty over applause. If not, place it in the scholarship fund at Brighton High in Walter's name. Protect what mattered to him." I sat back as if struck. The owner watched me with the wary kindness shopkeepers keep for men who might break. "You okay?" she asked. "She wrote this before she died," I said. I never knew she hid it. Then word due. People tuck truth into small places, the owner said softly. They hope the right hands find it. Then word due. I asked about the value. She tested the nib on a pad and nodded. "Your email's estimate is not generous. With provenance, it could fetch more. But so could its story. If told the wrong way. Fargrade. Any. Outside." The day was sharp. I could see myself. A thin man holding a pen and paper that changed the air around him. I called the auction house from the sidewalk. "This is not an approval," I said when a cheerful voice answered. "This is a mistake. Cancel any appointment under my name. Do not contact the student who used my address. He did not have permission. And I wake." We only spoke with Mr. Mercer via email. The woman said. Professional. If there are ownership concerns, we'll flag the file. And I wake. Flag it, I said. And send me your note confirming the cancellation. And I wake. I drove home and set the pen on the kitchen table. Sunlight slid across the wood and lit the gold clip. I opened Ruth's note again. Duty over applause. The words landed with a clean weight. I walked to the sink and ran the tap. Listening to the thin rush of water, it struck me how noise can pretend to be company. I turned it off and the quiet came back. Again, I pictured Daniel in the diner, jaw set, asking me to prove love with cash. I pictured his phone lighting up, his eyes always a few inches away from me. I went room to room, checking latches, as if the house had sprouted new exits. In the study, I pulled down the safe and changed the code. Then I paused. A code was not enough. I drove to the bank and rented a small safe deposit box. The manager was brisk. The vault? Right and clinical. Steele whispered. Papers slid. I placed the pen and Ruth's note inside, then stood there longer than necessary, palms against cool metal, as if heat could bless steel. On the way out, I caught my reflection again, this time in the polished floor. I looked like a man who had been forced to choose between love and guardianship, and had chosen both. Badly. At home. My phone chimed. A text from an unknown number filled the screen. Payment due by Thursday. No more delays. The next message came before I could breathe. Tell your grandson to answer. He is out of time. I sat down slowly, as if the chair were made of glass. So the river finally showed its name. Not fees. Not projects. Debt. I forwarded the messages to Olivia and typed. We need to talk now. The phone rang before I could hit send. It was Daniel. Grandpa, he said. Voice too bright. You busy? I looked at the bank envelope on the table, at the absence of the pen, at Ruth's empty drawer. I have time, I said. Great, he said. I'm stopping by. You'll be proud of me. Anyone on the 7? The line went dead. I stared at the door and felt the house draw one tight breath with me. The truth had taken off its mask. It was walking up my path. The knock came harder than it should have. 3 sharp strikes that rattled the glass in the front door. I opened it and there stood Daniel. Smile stretched too wide. A duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He hugged me quickly, more a brush than an embrace, and walked past me into the house as if he owned the place. The bag hit the floor with a thud. Grandpa, he said, I need to borrow something. Commenter, my stomach tightened. What is in the bag? Books? Clothes? I'm crashing here for a while, he answered. He turned toward me, grin slipping. You still have the pen, right? I looked at him carefully. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands twitched when he set them on the table. You tried to sell it, I said quietly. I saw the auction email. You gave them my name, my address. Do you realize what you've done? His jaw clenched. I had no choice. You don't understand what it's like. Everyone has more. Everyone is ahead. I can't show up with nothing. Hey, so, you had a choice, I said. You chose betrayal. Hey, so, his face hardened. It's just an object. Grandpa. A pen. You and Mom act like it's holy. But it's not. It could solve my problems. That makes it worth more than your memories. Cast your there. I felt the air leave my lungs. That pen is not for sale. It is not mine alone. It belongs to the story of our family. Kensheng. Daniel's laugh was bitter. Stories don't pay off debts. Creditors don't care about family legacy. They care about cash. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. If you won't give it to me, I'll find a way to take it. Sid, I stared at him. The boy who once held my hand at the zoo, pointing at lions with wide eyes, was gone. In his place stood a desperate young man with a shadow clinging to him. Daniel, I said, do not walk down this road. Sid, he slammed his hand on the table. I already did. Sid, the sound echoed through the kitchen. He reached for the desk drawer, yanked it open, and froze when he saw it was empty. He spun toward me. Where is it? I put it somewhere safe, I said. His eyes narrowed. Safe from me? Yes, I said. Until you understand what it means. Thanks for watching. He cursed under his breath, pacing like a trapped animal. Finally, he stopped, shoulders hunched. They're going to come after me, he whispered. If I don't pay, they'll come here. You have no idea what they're capable of. Thanks for watching. The duffel bag lay half open on the floor. Inside, I saw stacks of unopened bills, credit card statements, and a small metal lockbox. He saw me looking and kicked the bag shut. Daniel, I said gently, you should have told me before it came to this. And Abel of the Lorder, his eyes filled, but not with shame, with fury. I couldn't. You never listen. You sit in this old house with your photos and your rules, and you act like the world hasn't changed. But it has. Out there, money is respect. Money is survival. And you want to hand me a pen. In the Graydon place, I stepped forward. I wanted to hand you a life. A name that meant something. In the Graydon place, he shook his head. Names don't matter. Only numbers do. I wanted this. The words cut deeper than any insult he had spoken before. My chest ached as if Ruth herself had been erased by that sentence. Then he said the one thing I never thought I would hear from him. If you don't help me, I'll make sure no one in this family sees that pen again. Ever. I wanted this. I stared at him. My grandson. My blood. Threatening me in my own kitchen. The betrayal was complete. I whispered. You have already stolen more than an object. You have stolen trust. He was back to Damon. Daniel turned away, wiping his face roughly. I don't care. Not anymore. He was back to Damon. He grabbed the duffel bag and stormed out, leaving the door wide open behind him. Cold air swept in, sharp as glass. I stood there, unable to close it, unable to breathe. The boy I loved had crossed a line, and I did not know if he would ever return. I slept in the armchair with the porch light on. The door kept rattling in my head. At 2 a.m, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. On the third try, I answered and heard only breath. Then Daniel whispered my name. Please let me in. It's next with Munt from the climb. By the time I reached the door, he was already on the steps. Rain slicked his hair. His face looked younger, like the boy who hid behind my leg when thunder cracked. He stepped inside and stood with his back to the door, breathing as if he had outrun something with teeth. I made a mess, he said. I did not know where else to go. In the courses. Tell me the truth, I said. All of it. Well, he nodded and began. He told me about the cards he opened with easy clicks and limits that climbed like ladders. He told me about the trip he could not afford, the apartment he rented because his friends said it was close to the right bars. He told me about a website that promised fast money, about a friend of a friend who loaned him $2,000 at a rate that would turn a month into a trap. When he missed a payment, they doubled it. When he missed again, they sent messages with times and places. I guided him to the table and set a towel under his hands because sweat shook off his fingers. What did you promise them? I asked. My signature, he said. My watch, my laptop, and something worth more if I could get it. I said there was a pen in the family that could sell fast. I hated myself and kept talking anyway. No, then today. Tears hit the towel and vanished. I was going to take it tonight, he said. I knew the code. I knew where you kept the key. I came to steal from you, and I hate that sentence. I circled the house twice and could not step over the threshold. Please believe me. They're one down. I moved the pen to a safe deposit box. I said. He flinched as if a door had slammed. So there was nothing to take, he said. There was everything to save. They're one down. He folded forward. I thought the pen would erase what I did. I thought I could buy back my life. I was wrong. I am sorry. I am sorry in a way I cannot fit inside words. Heaven the grand. I poured water. He drank and kept speaking. He told me he had lied to Olivia and Martin. He told me he had pawned a camera he bought on credit. He told me he had offered to sell textbooks that were not his. Every confession seemed to shrink him. By the end of it, he looked like a boy wearing his father's coat and finding it made of iron. Look at me, I said. He looked up. His eyes were raw. You will return what can be returned, I said. You will call the companies and ask for plans. You will go to the police if anyone threatens this door. And you will stand with me when we tell your parents the whole story. And he nodded. I deserve whatever they say. They will making of Creston. This is not about punishment, I said. This is about repair. They will making of the shile. Repair, he repeated, almost tasting the word. How do we fix a year of lies? They will making of the shile. One day at a time, I said. One phone call at a time. And one choice at a time. They will making of the shile. I do not know how to be good at this. Will come in very see. You begin by being honest, even when your voice shakes, I said. You begin by not taking what is not yours. Will come in very own dade. He stared at the hallway where our photos hang. His gaze stopped on a picture of Ruth in the garden. He stood and moved closer as if distance and years could be walked. She would hate me, he said. She would hold your face and tell you to try again, I said. Then she would set rules you would not like. Will come in very see, he almost laughed. A broken little sound. That sounds right, while. The came bid of this. We talked until the gray of morning edged the windows. He told me how lonely it felt to keep up a performance. He told me how hard it is to say no in a room where everyone says yes. I listened and understood more than he expected. I had wanted applause once. I had chosen duty instead and resented it for a year. Then Ruth got sick, and duty was all that kept me from falling through the floor. I brought paper and a pen that was not the pen. I wrote 3 numbers at the top, a counselor at the college, a non-profit that negotiates debt, the local precinct desk. I pushed the page toward him. We will call them after breakfast, I said. But first we call your mother. The Kerms and Stang. He went pale. Now. The Kerms and Stang. Now. The Kerms and Stang. He stared at the phone. He dialed and closed his eyes while it rang. Olivia answered on the second ring. Voice tight with fear. He said her name and broke. He told her. He did not make himself prettier. He did not hide the worst parts. She cried. I cried. He cried again. We stayed on the line while the sun made a rectangle of light creep across the kitchen floor. When we hung up, he sagged and exhaled. I thought telling the truth would kill me. He said, it hurts, but it is like taking off a coat that was on fire. End fears one. I set my hand on the back of his neck, the way I did when he was small and feverish. He leaned into it without thinking. Listen, I said, this house is not a bank. It is a place where you can fail and learn to stand. I will help you if you do the work. If you choose the work every day. 7 times, I will, he said. I do not want to be the man who steals from his grandfather. I want to be the boy who asked too many questions and loved the answers. 7 times, then be him, I said. For the first time in months, I saw my grandson with the static turned down. I saw a person I could hand a future to someday. Not today. Someday. The distance between those two has to be walked. We would start with breakfast and a list. Rain thinned to mist. The house finally exhaled. The day after Daniel confessed felt strangely quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. He slept upstairs in the room that still smelled faintly of Ruth's lavender soap. I sat in the kitchen with my coffee cooling, Ruth's note heavy in my pocket. Duty over applause. The words would not leave me. By mid-morning, Olivia and Martin arrived. Their faces were pale, eyes swollen from a night without sleep. They sat at the kitchen table, Daniel across from them. Shoulders hunched. The silence was unbearable. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Why didn't you come to us?" she asked. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with grief. Daniel stared at the table. "Because I was ashamed. Because I thought you'd never forgive me." The inimus, Martin leaned forward. "We would rather hear the truth than be left in the dark. Debt, we can manage. Lies break families." The inimus, "I know," Daniel whispered. "I broke everything." He willed on. I reached into my pocket and placed Ruth's note on the table. "Not everything," I said. "There's still time. But only if we face this together." He willed on. Olivia read the note slowly. Her tears fell onto the paper, darkening the ink. She pressed her palm flat against the words, as if she could feel her mother's hand beneath. She knew this could happen, Olivia murmured. She knew we'd have to guard the past against ourselves. He willed it. Martin rubbed his temples. "So what now?" Daniel lifted his head. His face was streaked, but his eyes were clearer than I had seen in months. "I'll do whatever you tell me. I'll work. I'll sell my car. I'll sign papers. Just don't give up on me." "Hey, Jess." Olivia reached for his hand. This time he let her hold it. "We won't give up," she said. "But you have to understand, there will be no more secrets." "Hey, Jess." It felt like a fragile truce. One breath away from shattering. But it was real. For the first time. Daniel was not arguing. He was listening. That evening, after they left, he lingered in the kitchen while I washed dishes. "Grandpa," he said. "Do you hate me?" I set the plate down, wiped my hands, and turned to him. "No. I hate what you almost did. I hate the lies. But you are still my grandson." He swallowed hard. "I don't deserve that." "No one deserves love," I said. "It is given. What you can earn back is trust." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll earn it." The next week tested that promise. Collectors kept calling. One night, a car idled outside the house for 10 minutes before driving off. I changed the locks, called the precinct, and filed a report. Daniel shook as he told the officer the truth. But he did it. He looked smaller when it was done, but also lighter. On Friday night, the storm broke. I woke to a crash downstairs. I rushed into the hallway. Heart pounding, Daniel stood at the foot of the stairs, holding the baseball bat I kept by the door. The window over the sink was shattered, glass glittering on the floor. Outside, I saw shadows moving. Voices hissed. "They came," Daniel whispered. "They really came." "When?" I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The dispatcher's calm voice steadied me while I described the break-in. Daniel stood guard at the door, the bat clutched in his hands, his knuckles white. For the first time, he was protecting instead of taking. Red and blue lights washed the house minutes later. Officers swept the yard and found tire tracks leading to the road. The men were gone. But their warning remained in the broken glass and the fear that clung to Daniel's face. When the house was quiet again, he slumped into a chair, bat still across his knees. "This is my fault," he said. "I dragged this into your home." Yes, I said. "But you also stood to defend it. That counts for something." He looked at me as if he didn't believe it. But the truth was there. For the first time in years, Daniel had chosen family over fear. I swept up the glass and thought of Ruth's words again. Duty over applause. Maybe this was the beginning of duty. Maybe this was how he would finally learn. The night ended with us sitting side by side in the dim kitchen, too tired to speak, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The world outside felt dangerous. But inside, for the first time, I felt the faintest thread of hope tying us together again. Morning brought the cost. The window repair. The police report. The way sleep would not come. Olivia arrived with a folder and a determined face. Martin followed with coffee and a yellow pad. Daniel sat straight, backed at the table, hands folded as if in school. We made rules, not punishments, terms for repair. Daniel would move in with me for 3 months. Curfew at 10 on weekdays. Midnight weekends. No parties. He would meet the campus counselor by Friday. He would start shifts at the grocery store. He would sell the car he could not afford and use the money to begin repayment. Every Sunday night we would review the numbers. No secrets. He agreed without argument. He signed a simple contract in my study. His hand shook. Olivia read it slowly and added one line. If threats return, we call the police first. Not each other. We all initialed it. I called the auction house and asked for written confirmation that the consignment file was closed. It arrived an hour later. Then I moved the safe deposit box to a different branch under a new number. Duty over applause is quiet work. In the afternoon, we went to the non-profit office that helps people dig out of debt. Daniel stared at the floor. A counselor named Patrice led us into an office. She spoke plain and did not scold. She laid out a plan. Call each creditor. Ask for hardship terms. Close extra accounts. Freeze interest where possible. Make payments you can keep. Keep records. Answer every call. We made the calls with her sitting there. The first collector was hard. The second was worse. Daniel's voice shook when he said his name and his mistake. He did not blame me or his parents or his friends. He asked for a plan. By the fourth call, he sounded like someone learning a new language. He said thank you, even when the person on the line had none to offer. Patrice nodded each time and tapped a figure on the pad. We left with a folder of agreements and a list of amounts due. It looked like a mountain, but it was a staircase. That night, Daniel ate pasta, washed the dishes, and checked the back door lock twice. I watched him move around the room that held his childhood and his near future. Olivia called before bed. She thanked me and then told me the truth I did not want to hear. "Dad, I am angry," she said. At him. At us. At the way we mistook gifts for love. I told her anger was a good fuel if it burned toward action. We agreed to clear his storage unit on Saturday. If an item did not earn its place, it would be sold. At midnight, when the house was quiet, Daniel knocked on my study door. He held the yellow pad. He had written out a budget. Rent, phone, food, gas until the car sold. A line for savings. A line for debt. At the bottom he had scrawled a promise. I will not touch what is not mine. I will not trade tomorrow for tonight. I felt the old ache rise. Pride and sorrow. Stubborn twins. I signed the bottom and dated it. He did the same. We taped it to the fridge where it could judge us both. The next morning we changed the locks again and added a motion light over the back steps. I showed Daniel the breaker box and the water shut-off valve. I handed him spare keys. He looked at Ruth's photo on the shelf and whispered something I could not hear. Then he went to his first shift and came home smelling of oranges and cardboard. We were not safe. But we were moving. That would have to do. On Sunday afternoon, we visited campus. Daniel met with his advisor and told her he had taken on too much and fallen behind. He asked for extensions and did not try to charm his way through. She granted one small extension. In the cold outside, he exhaled. Telling the truth keeps shrinking my world, he said. But I can breathe in it. She have to do that as lift. Back home, I opened the shoebox of letters. I read Ruth's note to him. I told him about the scholarship line. If you do not choose duty, the pen funds a student who will. He listened, head bowed. I want to earn it, he said. But if I fail, give it away. Let it save someone else. The admission cost him. We drew up conditions. A year of steady payments. A year without new debt. A year of small kindnesses recorded not for show, but to train the heart. When that year was done, we would speak of the pen again. He agreed and added a line. If I brag. Reset the clock. I called the precinct and spoke with the officer who took our report. He explained an order and what to record. He did not judge Daniel and shook his hand. That night I heard Daniel in the kitchen, whispering into the phone. Later he knocked on my door and said he had called a friend he owed and apologized. The friend had sold a camera Daniel never returned. They settled on a number. He looked wrung out and relieved. Small rooms of his life were being aired at last. I slept a little better. In the morning, I found a note by the coffee pot in Daniel's blocky hand. Thank you for the second chance. I will not waste it. It was enough now. On Tuesday, our neighbor asked if everything was all right. I said we had a window to replace and a few lessons to learn. We set up a small camera over the porch and tested the alert. Sunday came. We spread receipts on the table, and his first paycheck arrived. We divided the money according to the plan. Debt. Food. Gas. He wrote 2 apology emails and printed them. We signed the ledger and closed the folder. Spring crept in slowly. As if unsure it was welcome. The maples outside my house pushed out pale green buds, and the air smelled faintly of earth waking up. Inside, our days fell into rhythm. Daniel woke early for his shifts at the grocery store. Came home tired but carrying his hours with pride. He washed uniforms in the evenings and studied late at the kitchen table. His head bent over books, the way it once bent over toy trains. Every Sunday night, we gathered at the table with receipts, pay stubs, and a calculator. At first, the numbers looked pitiful. His paycheck barely dented the balances. But as the weeks passed, the balances inched downward. Tiny victories. Each one a crack in the wall he had built around himself. I watched him learn the patience of repair. He did more than work. He cooked dinner twice a week. Simple meals of pasta, rice, and chicken. He insisted on fixing the fence in the backyard, hammering nails with a clumsy determination that made me smile. When Mrs. Callahan down the street twisted her ankle, he mowed her lawn without being asked. She called me later, her voice bright with surprise. "That boy of yours is changing," she said. One evening, after a long day, I found Daniel sitting in the living room staring at Ruth's portrait. His face was wet with tears. "I don't remember her laugh," he admitted. "I only remember the stories you tell. They will confound." I sat beside him. She laughed like bells. Even when she was tired. She laughed at my terrible jokes. She laughed when she burned dinner and we ate cereal instead. "They will confound." He closed his eyes, as if trying to capture the sound from memory. "I wish I had been better while she was here. Creatant. She would not want your regret. I said. She would want your change. Create. His shoulders shook. I put my arm around him, and for the first time in years, he leaned into me fully, as if he had finally remembered I could hold him. The redemption was not without struggle. One afternoon he came home with new sneakers. When I asked how he paid for them, his face darkened. I just wanted to feel normal, he said. You can feel normal when you face tomorrow, not when you hide it. I replied. He sulked, angry at himself, but returned them the next day. That moment mattered more than the purchase. Later, he volunteered at the food pantry on weekends. He told me it felt strange at first, serving people who looked beaten down by life. But then a small boy thanked him for carrying a box of cereal. And Daniel's voice cracked when he told me. That thank you felt bigger than any gift I've gotten. He welta. The house grew warmer. Not from the season, but from his presence. He began leaving notes on the fridge, reminders. Small jokes. Even a drawing of Ruth's roses. The notes made me smile when I came downstairs in the mornings. Olivia visited often. At first, she hovered, waiting for him to stumble. But as weeks passed, she softened. One evening, she caught him sweeping the porch and whispered to me. I almost believe him again. He welta. Trust was crawling back. Slow and deliberate. It had to be. The greatest change came one Sunday night when we finished the ledger. Daniel looked at the numbers and whispered, I'm not drowning anymore. I'm swimming. Slowly. But I'm swimming. His eyes shone with something I had not seen in him for years, hope. I slid Ruth's note across the table again. He read it silently, lips moving. Duty over applause. Then he folded it and pushed it back. Not yet, he said. I'm not ready, but I will be. Quote, I smiled. That's the first honest thing you've said about the pen. Siv, for once. Silence felt good between us. That night, as I turned out the lights, I caught him in the yard, standing under the motion lamp, staring at the sky. He looked small, but steady, like a young tree learning to bend without breaking. And I thought, maybe Ruth was right. Maybe love, mixed with patience and hard truth, could still bring him home. The roses bloomed early that year. They climbed the fence in stubborn red and looked like little hearts that had learned to endure weather. On a Sunday afternoon, I told Daniel we were going to visit the cemetery. He put on a clean shirt and did not argue. We drove in silence past the library, past the school where I used to teach, past the diner where we had broken each other open with coffee and anger. The sky was a clear blue that made every regret feel sharper. We stopped by Ruth's stone. The grass was trimmed neat around the base. Someone had left a small bouquet of daisies. I do not know who. I placed my hand on the cool granite and said her name the way I did when I came home late from work and wanted to be forgiven. Daniel stood a few feet back, hands in his pockets, as if he feared he might break something that mattered. Come closer, I said. He moved to my side. His shadow joined mine on the stone. For a minute we did not speak. Wind moved through the trees with a sound like pages being turned. I brought something, he said finally. He took a folded paper from his pocket. I wrote her a letter. I know she cannot read it. I need to say the words anyway. And he unfolded the paper and read. His voice was careful and plain. He apologized for the night he called me a fool. He apologized for the emails, for the window, for the moment he stood on my steps planning to steal. He told her about the budget taped to our fridge, about the job that made his feet ache, about the boy at the pantry who said, "Thank you," without looking up. He said he was still scared. He said he wanted to belong to our name again. When he was done, he held the paper to his chest. "I do not deserve absolution," he said. "I would like a little peace." Kennaman. I took the letter and slid it beneath a flat stone at the base of her grave. Tucked out of weather, she would want you to earn peace, not buy it, I said. But she would lend you courage while you do. Sieve 9, he cried, the way men cry when they have run out of excuses. It was a quiet sound, pulled from somewhere near the bone. I put my arm around him. He leaned into me and let the shaking finish. When the wave passed, he wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. I have one more thing, he said. He pulled a thin wallet from his back pocket and took out a credit card I had never seen. I kept this hidden. I did not use it after I moved in. I should have told you. He snapped it in half. The crack sounded loud in that careful place. He handed me the pieces. No more shadows. Dole, I breathed out slowly. Thank you, I said. Truth is a kind of clean. Dole, we sat on the low stone wall and watched a service across the hill. A family gathered under a green tent. A little girl in a yellow dress clutched a teddy bear. The minister's voice carried on the wind. Too soft to make out. It reminded me that every person here had a story with a hinge where things changed. Grandpa, Daniel said, I have been saving $20 from each check. It is not much. I want it to go to the scholarship at your school. In Walter's name, even if I never touch the pen. I want to build the fund the note speaks about. And he held out a small envelope. Inside was a stack of bills, worn from being counted. It could not change the world. It could change him. We will take it to the school tomorrow, I said. We will stand in the office and write his name the way he would have wanted it written. That is how we keep our dead alive. Ed. We walked the rows together and then went home. In the yard, Daniel fetched the spade from the shed. He knelt by the fence and dug a hole. I brought a young rose bush I had been meaning to plant. He set it in the earth, cupped soil around the roots, and pressed with slow, careful hands. For her? He asked. For her, I said. And for the boy you are trying to be. I think you watching. He looked up at me. Dirt on his fingers, sweat at his hairline, and I saw something I had almost given up looking for. Not perfection, not victory, a steadiness that grows only where truth has been told. Inside, I made tea. Daniel rinsed his hands and stood at the sink, staring out at the small new plant. I have a request, he said. I do not want the pen, not now, not this year. If you ever think I have earned it, you will tell me. If not, give it to the scholarship. I will not be the reason a promise is broken. I nodded. You just became the man who might one day hold it. He swallowed. I would like to sign one thing, though. He pulled the ledger to the table and wrote a line at the bottom in his blocky hand. I pledge to live as if someone is watching who loved me into this world. Then he signed his name with an ordinary pen and dated it. He pushed it across to me and asked me to witness. I did. And the ink dried without fanfare. That night we sat on the porch steps while evening gathered. The motion light made a circle on the grass. Frogs sounded from the creek. Daniel asked me to tell a story about Ruth that he had never heard. I told him the one about the first time she saw snow after we were married. How she ran outside in her slippers and caught flakes on her tongue like a child. He laughed, small and bright, and then covered his face and cried again. We are allowed to miss her, I said. We are also required to become the people she hoped we would be. God, he nodded. I am trying. God, I know, I said. And I am proud of the trying. God, summer came, heavy with heat, and the house smelled of cut grass and lemon polish. The routines we had built held firm. Daniel worked, studied, and kept the ledger with stubborn care. On Sundays, he handed me receipts without flinching. He no longer hid bills in bags or slid excuses across the table. The numbers still stretched like a long road, but they moved in the right direction. One evening, we sat on the porch with glasses of iced tea sweating in our hands. Fireflies sparked in the yard, and the air hummed with cicadas. Daniel leaned back and said, "Grandpa, when I look at the sky now, I do not feel the same weight. I feel..." In the seeing, I studied him in the glow of the porch light. The boy who once mocked an heirloom was gone. The young man beside me was not finished, not healed completely, but mending in the way that counts. The pen stayed locked away, untouched. Sometimes I thought of taking it out, placing it in his hands, testing his readiness. But then I would hear Ruth's voice. Duty over applause. She was right. Readiness is not proven by a gesture, but by the long arc of choices. So I waited, and Daniel, for once, did not press. Instead, he poured his energy into small acts. He helped Mrs. Callahan plant her garden. He carried groceries for a stranger at the market. He wrote letters of apology to friends he had borrowed from and never repaid. He told me each time it felt like placing a brick back into a wall he had knocked down. One afternoon, he came home with a slip from the college he had been approved for a scholarship grant to cover his final semester. "It is not enough to erase everything," he said, smiling with a mix of relief and disbelief. "But it is honest help." I hugged him, and for the first time, I felt his embrace tighten with genuine gratitude. We still had nights when shadows pressed close. Once, a strange car parked at the corner. Daniel froze, eyes wide, waiting for trouble. Nothing happened, but he admitted later he feared his past would always circle him. "It might," I said, "but if you keep walking forward, the circle gets weaker." And this 39, the rosebush he planted grew quickly, shooting green stems past the fence. Each morning he watered it before work. One evening he stood beside it, dirt on his hands, and whispered, "For her." He did not mean me. He meant Ruth. I heard it and felt something uncoil in my chest. Olivia and Martin visited often now. At dinner, Olivia caught me watching Daniel refill water glasses without being asked. She leaned close and whispered, "He is different." I nodded. She did not know how much that word meant. Toward the end of summer, Daniel asked if he could write in Ruth's ledger. He opened to a blank page and wrote a line that made my throat close. "Every choice is a seed. Some grow weeds, some grow trees. I choose trees." He signed his name slowly, carefully, as if the act itself mattered more than any inheritance. We sat together that night. Silence stretched comfortable at last. The stars were sharp above us. He said, "Grandpa, if I never touch the pen, it is all right. I think I finally understand. It is not about the pen. It is about the hands that hold it. Help and see." I closed my eyes and saw Ruth smiling, her faith alive in his words. The story does not end neatly. Debt still waits. Work still tires him. Trust still rebuilds, one brick at a time. But when I look at Daniel now, I do not see a thief or a liar. I see a grandson walking, slowly but surely, toward the man he was meant to be. And when the day comes, if it comes, when I place that pen in his hand, I know it will not be because he begged for it, or because he demanded it, or because I pitied him. It will be because he earned it, day by day, in sweat, in truth, in love. Until then, I will wait. Waiting, after all, is its own kind of faith.